and welcome to the MMA Plus TV YouTube channel with another preview show for an upcoming mixed martial arts event. We haven't done an audio preview show in quite a while, and it was actually an ACB show the last time we did it, and coincidentally a British ACB show when ACB held their Supersonic event from the Manchester Arena, which was of course headlined by Mamad Khalidov destroying Luke Barnett. And they do return this Saturday, July the 22nd, with ACB 65. And to talk about that show, joining me on the airwaves is Mr. Stuart Rodger. Stuart, we're back again with another preview. We hit it out of the park last time, 4,000 listens on our show, so hopefully we can get a bit of traction again.
Yeah, of course, we appreciate everyone that listened the last time. And also, can I say, it's been far too long since we've done a preview show. Hopefully we'll make these more regular in the future, but it's great to see ACB back in the UK for another big show, and it's great to do, I suppose, the preview show. It's fitting that, again, it's for ACB.
Yes, I'll touch upon a few points there. I do keep saying to you, Stuart, we need to do a preview show. And I don't know if it's just from the fact that I'm busy, you're busy, we've got so much MMA Plus website stuff and other things that we've not been able to just sit down and actually get it done. Or maybe I'm just lazy, I'm not too sure.
I suppose as well it's just selecting the shows, with there being so many on now and so many seemingly important and all acting as feeder to the bigger shows, then we're spoiled for choice every week, and if we're to do preview shows we'd kind of have to start doing them all the time, and it could get too much very quickly.
Yeah, so before we actually talk about ACB, you made an interesting point off the air about ACB now being the biggest promotion in Europe in regards to Bama and Cage Warriors. Maybe, I don't know, you can make the argument with KSW potentially. But do you stick to those guns? Do you think that ACB is churning out better quality mixed martial arts action right now compared to Bama and Cage Warriors?
I think in terms of action, if you watch it weekly, even the shows in Russia always have exciting finishes. They seem to be good matchmaking involved. And yeah, this whole less show, more fighting format seems to really be working for them, and they have this cult following online that's gathering steam and getting bigger and bigger. Also, every time they come to the UK, they can afford to do something which the other UK-based promotions can't, such as Bam and Cage Warriors, which is they came to Glasgow and they hired the Hydro, which is where the UFC was this past weekend. And even though they didn't get anywhere near filling it, no one else would be able to probably pay to hire that venue at the moment.
Yeah, the Hydra is very costly, isn't it, to run?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably our premier entertainment venue in Scotland now. It holds us just under the capacity of what Madison Square Garden does, and it's known as being one of the places to come for big artists now. It's got all the top technology you could want, and yeah, it will not be cheap to hire.
It's quite an interesting case, really, isn't it? Because this was supposed to be held stateside, and they were kind of forced to move that really short notice to Sheffield Arena. It's not actually going to be in the main Sheffield Arena. It's going to be in the Steel Hall, which holds up to 4,000. But that's still a really good number if you can pull that in for it's a very good mid-level show, I think, in terms of if you look at the really strong ACB shows against maybe the Young Eagles show. This is a very, very solid outing from them.
Yeah, I mean, when you add in how short notice it was that they had to put this card quickly together and throw in some UK guys to bring local audience in, how quickly they had to move the card over from California to Sheffield, get it booked. I mean, tickets haven't been on sale all that long, so to take a 4,000 seater venue on that kind of short notice is very ambitious. But as you say, it has kind of a big card feel. They've kind of done it at the end. The matchups are kind of bringing over, including the light heavyweight title fight, which is the headliner between Thiago Silva and Batraz Agnev. They have a big fight feel to them, so yeah, they've seemed to have pulled this together on short notice. Yeah, good luck to them, and hopefully it's a sellout. I very much doubt they'll do it in that time, but I would really like to see it getting a big support, and obviously they're coming back soon anyway to try and do it again.
And this is why it's interesting to me, because I feel like this is just a preview really for when they're going to host the event, which is being dubbed the Battle of Britain. Luke Barnett is going to go up against Scott Askham. It's a much anticipated fight. Lots of people are talking about it. I think maybe the idea was to hopefully get them on this card. Things didn't really shift that way. Things didn't really happen. I know there was a lot of back and forth between them, but they will be squaring off actually in the cage during the event. So I feel that this is a nice way for ACB to get a bit more traction in the location which that fight is going to take place.
Yeah, it's almost became like a prelims of sorts. We've still got a kind of mishmash card where we've got a lot of kind of American journeymen in the card that are left over from the kind of ashes of what was set for California, and then you've got a lot of people thrown in from the UK who were kind of installed at very last minute just to try and push the numbers locally of how many people will be interested and how many people will actually go and buy tickets. So yeah, this is kind of the card that is setting up for the card that comes. We expect something far more rounded when it comes to Luke Burnett versus Scott Askham, and I expect the card to be of much more grander in terms of when you look at it and the kind of fighters they'll bring across next time.
Yeah, and we'll sure to talk about that one a bit closer to the time. But let's focus on ACB 65 now. And of course, you mentioned that the main event is that title fight between Thiago Silva and Backstrom Agneyev. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. The fight for me, though, that sticks out, and the people's main event, if you're going to use that Helwani gimmick, is Pat Healy and Brendan Loughnane in a 155-pound lightweight matchup. Love this fight, I really do. And I know that Pat Healy, of course, he has that name recognition from Strikeforce and the UFC. His record may not reflect him as one of the best fighters outside of the UFC, and that may not be the case, but he is a very grizzled veteran. And in my opinion, arguably the toughest test of Brendan's career outside of Tom Duquesnoy. What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, you actually make a great point there that I was about to make myself. Pat Healy certainly seems to pose the biggest challenge yet in the career of Brendan Loughnane. As you say, he might be the best fighter in the UK so far, but if you look at his kind of the people he's faced, he kind of lacks that kind of grizzled veteran. And Pat Healy on paper looks like a massive test, but in reality, this is a great fight for Brendan at this time because Pat Healy's not had a notable win since back in Strikeforce.
Yeah.
He's kind of traded wins back and forth with some other journeymen around the kind of regionals in America, and I think he took a couple of fights in Brazil and kind of things like that. But in terms of beating a name opponent, you've got to go all the way back to Strikeforce. So for me, that's a great fight for Brendan at this time in his career. A lot of eyes are on him because of the steam he's been building up and the kind of win streak he's put together since the Tom Duquesnoy fight. I mean, what, 3 finishes in a row? So this could
Four
perfectly cap
finishes.
off.
Four finishes in a
Oh,
row.
are we talking 4 finishes in
Yeah,
a
we
row?
are.
Yep. Um, yeah, so this could cap it off for him. A lot of eyes are on him. We spoke about possibly UFC if the deal was right. But if not, surely in line for a shot at the lightweight title in ACB if he wins this one.
Yeah, definitely. I spoke to Brendan not too long ago, and he has aspirations for that lightweight title in ACB, and he's content to say in ACB. He signed a multi-fight deal with them. This is going to be the second of, I believe, 3 fights on a deal with ACB, and there has been a lot of talk, of course, about whether or not the UFC will come in for Brendan, and Brendan admitted, yeah, there had been talks in the past, but nothing significant, nothing that made him, actually question, is this going to be the move that I'm going to make now? He's fought in the UFC before. He was kind of a fill-in for the Tough Smashes series, and that's where he lost to Mike Wilkinson, which, as you kind of alluded to, he avenged the ACB 54 Supersonic, emphatically defeated him in the first round. It's really interesting to me because I think you're 100% right. Maybe the way that this is being promoted as it's like a fight that Brendan really needs to win. But I think realistically, this is a fight that Pat really needs to win. He has not got a marquee name on his record for quite some time now. You have genuinely got to go back to his Strikeforce days with, potentially talking Kurt Holloway, who just recently won that contract from the Contender Series as well. So I think there's a much more on the line for Pat in this one than I think for Brendan.
Yeah, I think Pat really benefits from being a kind of bite down in the mouth guard and go at it type fighter that his reputation kind of precedes his record. Recently, he's not looked good at all, and he looks like a fighter that's kind of past his best. And people don't care about that when they hear that he's fighting Brendan, and they just see that as kind of a big fight for Brendan Loughnane. So yeah, this is a great fight at this time in his career. Also, what I can say about Pat is that he's been KO'd in his last 2 losses. Brendan's been knocking people out. Surely this only goes one way.
Yeah, potentially if you're putting that MMA mathematics together, then this could, be a bit of a difficult night for Pat Healy. But you can't knock him. He's fought some good guys, especially, Leandro Silva as well. Very good opponent, very tough name. So you can't knock Pat. He's still been fighting the best names, and he was of course scheduled to face, and of course he was scheduled to face Saul Rogers at ACB 54 on that Manchester card. That fell out. Lots of politics, lots of crazy stuff going on. As me and you were kind of embroiled in on Twitter, what was going on at the
Oh
time.
yeah.
But to this fight, realistically, do you think that Brendan does earn a title shot off the back of this? I think that there's no question he has to. 4 in a row, 4 finishes in a row, and that loss to Tom Duquesnoy as well has been questioned for 2 years now since it happened. So I think definitely it looks like Brendan Loughnane, if he comes through against Pat Healy, could be challenging for that very lovely ACB lightweight championship.
Yeah, I think as well when you look at the kind of rotation that ACB put into their stars, they don't mind letting their champion sit out for a while and wait for the right opponent. And if Brendan Loughnane wins this one, then surely slotting him into that next UK card would be very easy for them to do, and it would make complete sense in the title fight and would draw in a massive crowd as well as the headliner.
Yeah, and the champion, of course, is Abdul Aziz Abdul Vakabov. I think I got that correct. Is no idea if I did, but I'm going to assume I did. Anyway, very good fighter as well. I've seen him a few times in recent ACB shows. So I think really that one's the interesting one for Brendan. I'm less intrigued. I like the name value in this Pat Healy fight, but I think that one could potentially be. It's one of those fights, fight of the year. Brendan will most likely have to go over to Russia, though, I think.
And you think so? You don't think they'll bring it over here?
Let's be realistic. I think that the way that ACB operates is very clear that Russia is that key market and they are trying to grow. In the UK, they're trying to grow their shows over here, as we saw with Supersonic, as we're seeing here, and also we're going to see with Battle of Britain as well. But you know what? Russia is their market. I think that no matter what, that's always going to be, their fighters. Those are the guys that they brought off. Like you just got to look at Magomedov, Peter Yan, all these guys, and if you really think about it, when you think ACB, those are the names that stick out at you because they are their marquee talent, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, no matter how good the Brit is in Brendan Loughnane.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm not too upset if they put it on in Russia. The cards they always bring over to the UK are great anyway. Cards in Russia are always great, so whatever week they want to put it on, I'll tune in. So I can't complain whatsoever.
Do you think Brendan's going to finish him?
Pat Healy, without a doubt. I'm even going to say first round. He finishes Pat Healy. I give him 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. I hope
Two
that
and a
you're.
half minutes.
We'll see if you're correct, Stu. After Saturday night in Sheffield, I think that Brendan should take this one. Pat can make it dirty, and I think that's what he needs to do to beat Brendan Loughnane. But I think that the momentum is on the Mancunian side in this one, and I think that he's going to earn that ACB title shot off the back of that. So of course that is not the main event of ACB 65, but it's the people's main event, the fight that a lot of the Brits are talking about anyway in regards to that. The real main event, though, of course, is Thiago Silva against Backstrom Agniev. You said to me this one is an interesting bout. Why is that, Stu?
This is interesting for me because Agniev has only had 3 pro fights. To put him up against a veteran like Thiago Silva shows that ACB must have considerable faith in what talent he's bringing. He's looked really impressive in his performances so far. Loved him when he knocked out Max Nunez. He looked great, but to put him against somebody who's as experienced as Thiago Silva and who's as much of a veteran, is this a step too far for him at this time? We'll see. I think possibly.
It's interesting though because I thought he looked fantastic against Max Nunez, and Max is not the kind of guy that you can just walk over. He's proven, his durability, his toughness, especially in fights against like Ion Pascu, for example. And yeah, as you mentioned, Thiago Silva, he's got that UFC experience. He's been around the block, fought in WSOF as well, and he is arguably the marquee name for them in this division. But you just have to think, there's no way ACB, because to me, as much as you can argue about the politics in ACB, I think that their matchmaking is very fair, and they're not the kind of Russian promotion like you may argue EFN is, where they are kind of bringing the Brits over to pad like the Russians' record, and they're bringing over some other foreigners to pad Russian records. I genuinely don't see that with ACB. I think they've got very fair matchmaking. So even though he has had maybe only a fraction of the fights Thiago Silva has, he brings the same amount of energy, the same amount of ferocity with how he presents himself in the cage. And I think this is going to be an absolute barn burner. If someone doesn't go to sleep in this, if someone does not get finished, I would be so surprised.
Oh, it's going to be absolute warfare, and I can't wait for it. What I will say is with Silva, he's been in a bit of a role lately. I mean, he's won his last 3 fights. He's looked better than he has in a good while, probably since his UFC days. So I think this is the worst time for someone who's only 3 pro wins to be facing Thiago Silva. So we'll see what happens. The new guy looks great, honestly. Agniev, I thought he's looked fantastic so far. I really hope that he looks the same again because it will prove we've got something real and something solid in our hands. Possibly a world star, although ACB will probably tie him up and we'll never ever see him outside of there. But yeah, let's just hope for a great fight.
Yeah, and you know what? If you look at who Thiago's actually beaten in that recent run, Stav Ekonomou, who I actually saw at Bellator in London, where he
Yeah,
absolutely choked the living shit out of Dan Kaneki. It was very difficult to watch. He is a
I
beast.
remember seeing
Yeah,
that, man. That was good.
yeah, that was crazy. And of course, you've got Sokuju as well, who would beat. And Sokuju's been around the block like many times, hasn't he? He's a very
Oh,
grizzled vet.
Socrates getting knocked out left, right, and centre just now, though.
I know it doesn't mean anything now, but it's still a veteran
Oh
on
yeah, man,
Tiago's
he's still a
record.
big name.
So I think realistically, he's fought some tough dudes, and he's come out of that WSOF run, which wasn't very successful. It was plagued by injuries. He was supposed to fight like several times, and nothing really came through. I think he only had one fight in the organization. Of course, UFC was hit and miss for more reason than one. But yeah, I honestly I think that there's method to the madness, and I am expecting that as ACB seem to be putting the stock in here, that Backstrom Agniev is probably going to come out on top, and he's going to shock a lot of people against a very tough and a very credible opponent in Thiago Silva.
Yeah, I mean, when Silva has lost recently, it has been by KO. Agneyev is extremely dangerous, so that's a recipe for an upset, surely.
So we're going for an upset on the cards at ACB 65. We'll see if that delivers in the main event. But there's another fight that we want to talk about, another interesting one, and that is Joshua Velez, who, of course, he also fought on that ACB show in Manchester, was embroiled in a slight bit of controversy, which I'm sure me and Stuart will talk about in a second. Against another very tough Brazilian in Leandro Silva. I love this fight. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, another former UFC veteran in the card, Leandro Silva, and Aviles is actually a lot better than what people think. I mean, he's 17 KOs in his 25 wins. That's a great record. He's been around the Californian scene for a long time in Tachi Palace and King of the Cage. He's never actually made it to the big show though, apart from now. Finally, ACB taking a chance on him. He's got that controversial win, as you said. We'll talk about it in a minute. But yeah, still a win on his debut, and now he goes on to see if he can string together another one. He could be the only one who's kind of a rival to Brendan Loughnane for that title shot.
And let's not forget to mention that he holds a split draw over Drecker Closer, who MMA Plus's very own Ben Smith will love to talk about, of course, with his infatuation with Mark Diakese.
Oh yeah, yeah, that boy's got a problem.
We won't go into that anyway. We're talking about this fight. Listen, you're completely right. I think that he is very underrated, and I got to see him fight firsthand against Amir Khan Adiev at ACB 54, and as you mentioned, it was that really weird situation where I believe a judge was put on the spot to make the decision. It was a draw, and then of course he got the split
Mm.
nod. Again, he's a training partner with Lorenz Larkin, of course, now who's in Bellator.
Yeah, I think what was the judge told at the time? We don't do draws.
Yeah, we don't do draws, even though I feel like there's been several draws in ACB.
Oh yeah, but they're always told to pick one. Well, at that time he was told to pick one. Apparently that was told that was the procedure. But as you said, there has been draws in ACB before, so God knows what was going on that night.
Do you think he did a bit of eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
I think at the time he's probably just hoping whatever one keeps his kneecaps.
And on that note, swiftly moving on. No, seriously though, it is crazy. We're not going to get too much into that because that's been
Yeah,
discussed.
yeah, and it's pretty libelous. So
It
yeah,
is
we'll
pretty
move on.
libelous.
Yeah,
We won't go on that. But no, he's a very talented young guy, and as I say, training partner of Bellator's Lorenz Larkin, and I know how much I've spoke to Lorenz about Joshua after that fight, and he spoke of of him so fondly, not just on a training level, but they're really good
yeah,
friends, and it was really cool to see the way Lorenz was reacting, talking about Josh, and I think that it can only benefit him training with a guy, in my opinion, a very very credible contender in Lorenz Larkin, who made a very brave decision, a very bold decision to say fuck it to the UFC and go try things out in Bellator.
yeah. I mean that's the landscape we're in now. There's so many guys doing that, and even somebody like Joshua Velez, who's going to be fighting. When I was watching some footage today and having a look at his record, doing some research for this show tonight, I was thinking, why hasn't this guy been picked up? I mean, one loss in his last 13 fights since 2014. That just shows you what kind of talent's slipping under the UFC's radar compared to some of the absolute garbage they're bringing in.
And do you know what I think that issue is? I think they have a phobia of records because obviously Josh's record is 25, 11, and 2. And you're looking at it, it's
Yeah.
like, shit, this guy's got 11 losses. And I
Yeah, the
think,
guy went 2-7 at the start of his
yeah.
career, I think. Yeah.
So I
So
think,
that has to be
yeah,
looked into. You can't judge a guy based on that. You need to look into the whole record. If you went 2-7, that just shows tremendous improvement, and for me, that shows you're living up to potential. If somebody can improve that much in that short space of time, that's a guy I want to get on board with.
very true. And he has shown, great ability. We've seen so many times a fighter having a, difficult start to their career and going on and doing some fantastic things. And maybe one of those, a man with a similar record is Artem Lobov. No, I'm absolutely joking with that. But but I think honestly, I do feel that some of the bigger promotions to have a bit of a phobia when it comes to looking at, oh, this guy's had 11 losses, this and that, this and that. And I think that that's only going to help Joshua Velez because he's going to be always coming under the radar, and that's going to benefit him, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will probably look at Leandro Silva, go UFC veteran, fighting a guy who's never been in Bellator or the UFC. And they'll probably think, yeah, the veteran's going to take this one. He's only 31 years old. I keep calling him veteran as if he's like 35, 36, but he is only 31. He does look like an old man. He has that Brazilian old man face. But yeah, for me, Velez is the favourite in this one. A lot of people will have it the other way around, but Velez looks good for me. I really like him in this matchup.
Were you disappointed with Leandro Silva in the UFC? Because it seemed that after he had a pretty good start, when he was fighting the likes of Efrain Escuredo or Luis Gonzalez, both of those decisions, it seemed that he just lost a lot of momentum, really, especially after the Brenneman fight. And although he won those two, he then lost against Jason Sago, who's not that good, and of course Rustam Habilov, who is actually a pretty good fighter. But I feel that because of the style of fighter, he is that very typical grindy Brazilian style. I feel that he did himself more harm than good because losing two fights, I don't think realistically though that was call for a cut, even though maybe his performances weren't the best.
Yeah, when you're kind of that fighter in the UFC, you better keep winning because the minute you even lose two, they're going to look for any excuse to cut you because it's no secret how much they love their exciting fighters. Uh, but yeah, I think he was kind of hard done by, as you say, Jason Sago, not that good, but it was only a split decision anyway, and Habilov is good. So yeah, there was no shame in who he lost to. There was no shame in his time in the UFC. He went 3-3 in his last run. So yeah, pretty much hard done by that he got cut, but understandable considering the style.
Understandable, and I think he may have learned from that because he absolutely smashed Pat Healy in his ACB debut.
Oh yeah, what was it? Like 40 seconds?
Yeah, just under 40 seconds.
That's crazy. And for him to go from having that the kind of grinding style he had in the UFC to come out and knocking out Pat Healy in like 40 seconds, yeah. we'll see what he's got for us in this fight. But yeah, I like Velez. There's no doubt about it. I watched a lot of footage on him today. Seen a lot of promise, a lot of potential. Don't know why he's not been picked up by a bigger organisation before. And as you say, he trains with Lorenz Larkin. He's got pedigree. I really like him in that matchup.
And do you think it's a benefit as well if Velez wins here, because ACB haven't really got any marketable United States stars, and it does seem like it's a market they want to crack?
If they go the right way about it, when they seem to take a lot of the American guys on just now, they seem to be going for guys who have fought for UFC or Bellator, come towards the end of their career. This is the kind of first guy they can kind of mould into a US star that's actually one of their own. So, yeah, if they handle it properly, he's definitely got potential to be that breakthrough over in America.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that fight. Actually, let's see if it does deliver in Sheffield this Saturday night. And don't forget, you can follow all the action for ACB 65 on mmaplus.co.uk. I will be on location for that, and of course, I expect the guys to be watching from home as well. So lots of opinions and lots of views as well. Another fight I want to talk about, and this man I spoke to yesterday, and I have infinitely more respect for him now after speaking to him. Really, really interesting character. And that, of course, is Andrew Fisher, who will be facing off against UFC veteran. I mean, that's not really a compliment anymore, but UFC veteran
Yeah,
Niklas Backstrom, who is going to be making his ACB debut as well. And it's an interesting one, and I think this all came about because Backstrom was supposed to fight on Tanko, and there were some issues with his opponent, Tim Wilde. And this fight, obviously, ACB being booked short notice after the switch from America, opened up, and he's on here now.
yeah. I'm not a massive fan of Backstrom. He's one of these guys I think gets a little bit more credit than he's actually worth. If you look at his record, it's very padded. I've never been overly impressed. So when I look at Andrew Fisher here, I see a tough UK veteran, and yeah, I think he's got a good chance.
You heard me say just now, but when I was introducing these two, that I have a lot more respect for Andrew Fisher. The reason why is this guy could not get any fight after he fought Norman Park at ACB 47 Braveheart in Scotland.
He's always fought tough guys. He's never took the easy fights. Had to fight Norman Park in Glasgow. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, much better fighter than Nicholas Backstrom.
But I do keep alluding to this fantastic story with Andrew Fisher, which after that Norman Park fight, he really struggled to get matched up. That was in October 2016. His next fight would be February 2017 in Brazil. Now I said, Andrew, you're from the northeast. You know, it's not the most glamorous part of the world, let alone the UK.
Yeah.
How the hell did you end up in Brazil? He says to me, I googled top MMA promotions in the world, got a list, found some email addresses, and just sent them all a quick email saying, fancy having a Northern on your show. And he
Oh,
landed in Brazil.
you've got to love the DIY kind of ethics behind that. That's phenomenal. Everyone should get their fights that way.
Yeah, Andrew Fisher, he got his fight in Brazil that way. He just sent a mass load of emails out. And credit to the guy, and now he's on ACB. Fair play. He trains with, of course, Colin Fletcher. He trains with Ryan Scope. So some really well names in the Northeast, some really credible names. And he's a very genuine guy. And I think he deserves this opportunity. He has fought some very tough dudes in his career. You know, and as you mentioned there, he's got that win over Shea Walsh as well. And I think even in the Norman Park fight, he admits that size did not help him in that. It was a lightweight fight. You know, he's a small lightweight. That's why this one's at featherweight and he's going up against Backstrom. So I think it'll be interesting if we do see a peak and prime Andrew Fisher, and we'll be interested to see who he emails afterwards if he
Yeah.
gets the win as well. Is Dana White, should he be expecting an email, or even Snoop Dogg?
Hey, you see, if he emailed Snoop, I hear Snoop's got a lot of clout and pull these days. God knows what those shares will do for you, but apparently smoking drugs on live TV, yeah, that's allowed now.
That's a quick question. Is marijuana not banned in Vegas?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think it's legal in Nevada.
And they're literally just letting him smoke that.
Yeah,
That-
it sits and blazes it up on camera while he sits and drinks gin and juice with Uriah Faber.
What do you think, like Nick Diaz's stance is on this, especially when he got suspended from the Nevada State Athletic Commission?
Man, I bet that role was originally for Nick Diaz and he probably turned it down.
Have
Imagine
you
Diaz
got
covers
Nick? Have you
commentary.
got Nick Diaz on Snapchat? That dude is literally out in a nightclub every night, and he
Oh
must be
yeah,
smoking hella joints.
like my girlfriend like keeps up with the Diaz's on kind of Instagram and Snapchat and kind of shows me things, and all they're doing all the time is partying 24/7, partying, training, eating, partying again. That's a life.
You think we're gonna see them back, either of them?
I'd like to say so, but I think they're stubborn enough to not do it until they need the money.
Look, let's talk quickly about one more fight, then we'll wrap this up for another time. Mike
Yeah,
Grundy, Michael Tobin. I know that Mike Grundy's a massive fan of you, and we actually spoke about Michael Tobin last time.
for me, this is one of the biggest mismatches on the card.
In what way?
In the fact that Mike Grundy is a far better fighter than what Michael Tobin is. Michael Tobin got made look like a rank amateur by Dean Garnett last time out.
Dean
His
Garnett's a
record
great
back,
fight. Great fight, though.
yeah, but he got absolute schooled. He wasn't in that fight for even 10 seconds. He was lucky not to get finished in the first, and then Dean Garnett just fucking slaughtered him and levelled him in the second. If you look at his record in Australia, it's ridiculously padded. And it's Mike Grundy. If you are not good at if you do not have a high level wrestling game or grappling game against Mike Grundy, you're getting submitted, and he's going to be on top of you, all over you until he submits you. Yeah, this is only going one way. This fight.
Do you know if Grundy's signed to ACB on a multi-fight? Or is it
No,
just a one-shot?
I, I am not privy to that sort of information.
Because there was some rumours I heard that potentially he was going to be fighting on
Yeah.
Bellator, but obviously that didn't happen. I'm not too sure if it will. Anyway, so I think he's still kind of floating around at the minute as well, which is interesting. I think it's kind of good for him because he was signed to Bama. And realistically, they tried to build him slowly. Then he had that loss against Damian Stacyak,
Yeah.
but he wasn't really fighting anyone of note. And I'm happy for him. I know that obviously you're not really giving Michael Tobin much credit, but record-wise, it's something decent to have on your own resume.
Oh yeah, it's totally not to discredit Mike Grundy or this matchup for Mike Grundy in any way. I just don't feel that Michael Tobin is much of a threat for Grundy because of how well Grundy can grapple. I mean, this guy's wrestling and his grappling's on another level to pretty much most people in the UK. When I've spoke to him in the past, this guy's went over to train in the college programs in America. He's Commonwealth Games medalist. You can't kind of. There's nobody out there in the UK that really kind of rivals him in terms of grappling, in my opinion. I mean, he went over to Shuto and took on their champion. Uh, just was dominated him throughout the fight
Yeah,
with his grappling, with his wrestling. And I think he can do that to most guys in the world unless they're Russian or they've came up through the American collegiate system.
I'd really love to see them put him in with a Russian wrestler. I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
interesting. Very,
for
very
for
interesting.
me, for me, I've kind of said that all along now that what I want to see now is Mike Grundy against a high level grappler. I think that's a great and interesting matchup, and I think until we see that, he'll keep on rolling up and racking up the wins. If you keep putting him against strikers, Michael Tobin has a lot of submissions, but I think Grundy's submission game will be better. So I think he'll play right into Grundy's hands. So I'd really like to see him against a high level grappler that will really give him a kind of really tricky fight because I really want to see kind of Grundy's ceiling because just now he looks great and I think he deserves to be in a bigger promotion. He's getting this opportunity and I hope it leads to bigger things for him.
And it's interesting for me because the loss against Stacek, although was a submission loss, I think was more down to do with his cardio and his lack thereof of cardio as well, and his lack of experience as well. He was kind of really thrust in there. I think that was his fourth professional fight, and Stacyak went on to fight in the UFC. So yeah, I'd love to see him against a Russian wrestler. Let's see what he can do now that his cardio is presumably better. From what we've seen anyway, he did really well against Yutaka Saito in Shuto to last all 3 rounds of 5 minutes as well. So very interesting. But I'm agreeing with you. I think Tobin has the benefit of having that slightly padded record, which helped him onto a 12-0 start before Dean Garnett embarrassed him. Obviously, Dean Garnett now is going to be challenging for the title. So potentially as well, could we see Dean Garnett against Mike Grundy?
Oh, now that's a fight I really would like to see, and that would definitely fit on Battle of Britain if Grundy was ready for it. Uh, I spoke to Grundy earlier on in the year. He said he kind of wanted to take the first half of the year out, and then he was looking to get 2 or 3 fights under his belt in the latter half if he could stay fit and healthy. He just wanted to make up for taking that half year out. So realistically, you could see him probably, if he wins this and wins it impressively, maybe signing that contract with ACB and taking a fight on the next UK card.
I'd like to see that fight. I really would. I think that would be great. And that's if Dean comes through. But Dean's a very good fighter, very underrated. You know, had the privilege of seeing him in Bellator when he didn't do so well, and he'll even admit that there were a lot of things going on at that time. And there's obviously that very well documented documentary by the BBC on his weight cut.
If anyone hasn't seen that documentary, I'm trying to remember what it's called, what My Weight Cut in Hell or My Weight Cutting Drama.
Something like
It's
that, yeah.
on. It's available in the iPlayer. But yeah, what a great documentary that was. I was engrossed all the way through, and it was better than I even thought it was going to be. And I really think it's a must-watch for any MMA fan out there.
Yeah, definitely check that one out. But I think that brings us towards the end of our preview show for ACB 65. I think, you know what, Stu? It's a pretty interesting card. I think they've done well to pull it together. And we haven't really touched upon the undercard, but I'll just mention a few names I think people should watch out for. James Doyle, who is the better half of Joanne Doyle, a very promising amateur fighter coming up. This is, of course, going to be James' professional debut as well. Aaron Robinson, another very credible amateur fighter who's going to be in his second pro fight as well. And there's another really good fight. Aaron Abbey is going up against Sam Halliday as well on the undercard. So lots of really good fights and lots of names to watch out for as well from top to bottom really.
Yeah, another fighter on the card who's a bit higher up is the Russian fighter Alexei Polpudnikov. He's actually in an 11 fight win streak just now and has looked really, really impressive. He's only 24 years old, so he's definitely one to watch. He's fighting the American, it's been a bit of a journeyman, Donald Sanchez. It's kind of a set up fight for him to look even better. As you say, they love promoting their Russian talent, but definitely one to keep an eye on for the future.
So that ends this return of the ACB preview show, the MMA Plus preview show. Stuart, it was a pleasure, I would say, to be chatting shit with you once again. Where can the listeners find you on social media if they want to hear that lovely Scottish insight?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at Stuart Rodger MMA, or obviously just follow us over at MMA Plus. That is the site's website, and all our articles go there. And most of my live commentary for events will either go on my page or the site's page.
A big thank you for everyone for listening to the ACB 65 preview show. Don't forget you can check it out on Fight TV, I believe, and Box Nation as well. And if you can't be asked for that, just follow all the latest news and reports of the event on mmaplus.co.uk. I've been Andreas Georgiou and Stuart Rodger. A big thank you, and we'll hopefully see you very soon.
Yeah, see you next time.